This is the premium economy of the Singapore Airlines A350 ULR. This is where I'm gonna sit today for the record-breaking 19-hour flight from New York to Singapore.
Welcome back to an episode of Message and Call. Today, we are not going to talk about Agile for the first time. Well, maybe not, maybe the second time already. Today, I am going to share with you about my experiences going back to Malaysia, my birth country, after half a decade, 5 years later. So since the last time I went back. So, to start it off, it was one of those things I've been planning to do. Pretty much, it has been a long time since I've seen my parents. And also, it gives me an opportunity to show my kids who has not been to Malaysia. I've got two kids. The oldest one, who's 13, have been to Malaysia, but she was too young the last time we visited Malaysia. So she has no recollection of what Malaysia looks like. Now, for the youngest one, who is now 7, this is his first time flying and first time going to Malaysia. So what better way than to take the world's longest flight? So that is one of the biggest challenge in there, is that for me, basically I said, hey, you know what? Why don't we just break that and just take and try the world's longest flight? It was very intriguing to watch the premium economy flight from Newark, New Jersey, takes off all the way to Singapore. So for me to go to Malaysia, basically I have to take a flight from here to New Jersey, and then take New Jersey direct flight to Singapore, and then a Singapore to Malaysia. So of course, first time flying for my son, and also for my oldest one, in terms of recollection of what it is flying. Now the experience overall, I think it was good. I want to shout out to the flight crew of Singapore Airlines for doing an exceptional job in making sure that we had a great time on the flight. Now flying there, it was awesome. Now would I do it again? Probably not, because it was 19 hours and that was, I think, pretty long time to be sitting in place. Throughout the flight, I could not sleep. One of the reasons why is because I could not put my seat down. There was a gentleman behind me that was fairly, large and taking up the space. I did not just want to squeeze him. So I sat upright for the entire time. Now I did get up and walk around, end up watching movies. They have over 300 plus titles on board. I watched movies probably, the only time I slept was only 2 hours. So overall, great experience. Coming back wise, I think the crew wasn't as great. The flight overall was still good. The crew was less friendly compared to the when we flew on towards Singapore. So overall, I say thumbs up. For some of you that are thinking about flying Singapore Airlines, I would say give it a try. They're a little bit more expensive, but I think they are well worth it. If you have not been to Asia before, around that area, Malaysia, Singapore, around the area, so when you get there, the first thing that you're gonna feel is gonna be the weather. So in the airport, you're still okay. KLIA, the KL International Airport, there's still air conditioning around, so you feel cool and everything like that. But when you walk out the door, be ready for the weather. So luckily we landed at night in Malaysia, so it wasn't too bad. For the kids, the entire trip overall, the biggest challenge that we had was the weather. Now you're gonna find places that has AC, especially indoors, but most of the time they are limited to what we call tourist areas, and not all the places. Since we were going and visiting families, there were places where it was really hot. When you were walking around especially, we had to cut short some of our plans because it was too hot and we were just too tired. So that's one of the things to take into consideration when you go to Malaysia, is the weather is going to play an effect. So be ready for it. One of the shocker for my kids is the bathroom. So the bathroom in Malaysia generally tend to be okay, but I remember growing up that most of the places, it is what we call a wet bathroom. So some of the places you go to will not have the traditional, what we call a place for you to sit on and do your business. Most of it is going to be what we call a squatting bathroom. You have not seen a squatting bathroom, you're gonna be in for a shock. It's pretty much like a hole, and you actually have to squat. So in order to do that, you probably want to take off your pants and things like that and hang up somewhere. So think about that. You're squatting and you're taking a dump. For those that haven't done it, it'll be an interesting experience. I would just have to say that. Okay. Now the other part of this is that if you are traveling in Malaysia, do keep in mind that most places have limited toilet paper. Now it's one of those things when I walk into the bathroom, first thing I make sure is that there is toilet paper. So don't just rush in there thinking that there will be toilet paper. Most often than not, you'll find that they don't have toilet paper. They have what we call a bidet, and a bidet isn't as advanced as places in Japan. This is basically just a hose on the side of the bathroom, and you take it and you hose down your behind. Okay, so needless to say, it's wet. Okay, so there are toilet papers, but they are usually hanging in one single spot in the bathroom. When you walk in, look for those. You have to get those toilet papers before you go into the toilet stalls, so keep that in mind. Sometimes I will walk in there, I couldn't find it. The first couple of days, like, why isn't there any toilet papers? And that reminds me that the reason why my parents used to say, hey, make sure you have some toilet tissue papers and things like that with you wherever you go. Those do come in handy, so bring a lot of tissue papers with you, just in the event that you may need to use it. Alright, if you are traveling in Malaysia and if you intended it to be driving, for an American, for a tourist going to Malaysia, for me going back into Malaysia, I got an international driver's license. I got it through AAA, fairly easy. Go in, take some pictures, fill some forms, pay the amount, and I took it with me. So I bring that with me together with my US driver's license and kept that with me every time I drive around. One of the differences is this: if you are from the US going into Malaysia, driving is on the opposite side of the road, so you do have to be careful. Now for me, since it has been a long time since I've driven on the other side of the road, the first day I had my brother driving, so I was lucky enough where I had a relative, my brother in this instance, that helped me drive the first day. I did rent a van at the KLIA airport. I got it from a rental company. It was a local rental company, not the ones that you get which is international, like Hertz and Avis and things like that. I got it from Surya, I think it's called Surya Car Rental. Fairly decent pricing for 4 people. I wanted a big enough van to hold the luggages that we have, because we're there for 3 weeks. So I've got like 4 big luggages. They're like 28 inches, big ones, and then each of us has backpacks. So it's critical that I have enough storage space, enough trunk space to put all my luggages. So we end up with a van. The cost overall wasn't too bad. I think it cost me around 4,400 ringgit. So it's about $1,100 US, based on conversions, about 1 to 4. So overall, great experience. Pick it up at the airport, on the way back, return it at the airport. So everything went really smoothly, except that bear in mind that if you just land, if you intend on driving, I would say you might not want to do that if you haven't driven on the other side of the road compared to the US. So I did that. I've had years of experience driving before I came to the US on a different side of the road. So for me, it's a matter of just taking the time, taking a day, observing it and getting used to it. And then once after that, I drive the next day, short distance, and then things just kind of click. So that's driving in Malaysia. The other part is this: if you are driving around in Malaysia, if you're going away from the city and then going onto the highway, the roads are all in Malay languages. So bear that in mind, keep that in mind. The things that you're going to use is you want to make sure that you can pay the toll. The highways require toll. So in order to pay for those things, one of the things that I found handy was this touch and go card. So you can get those touch and go card, probably get it in Malaysia. There's a place, I think that it's called Watson. They're pretty much kind of like a Walgreens here in the US. Go there, they do have a Watson's card that allow you to also use it as part of touch and go. Those do come in handy, especially when if I'm driving and I'm finding a getting into a parking lot in the KL, especially you can use those to go in and get out. So it's fairly easy to do. Other than that, you will have to use pay cash for that. When you go to places, there are places outside of the city. For example, in Malacca and Ipoh, there's the places that I visit that is outside of what we call tourist areas. They don't use those systems. So in that event, they do require parking fees that you have to pay, and usually in the form of a parking coupon. So you may get it from a local store that's nearby. I kind of did the same. I went to one of the restaurants, asked them if they have some that they could sell for me. So end up buying a coupon and then put it on the card. It's one of those where you scratch off the dates and times and things like that, how many hours you want, and it will leave you on the dashboard. So fairly inexpensive, pretty easy way to go. Other than that, if you're not driving, I would say a lot of taxis to take. There are the trains to take if you're in the KL, and also services like Grab car services. I think Grab was one of the most popular one there is in Malaysia. Driving in Malaysia is a bit tricky, kind of like driving in New York City. If you can drive in New York City, you can drive in Malaysia. So Malaysian drivers usually can drive anywhere in the world because of the way they drive. In Malaysia, you gotta be brave, stick your car front out and go. Okay, so a 2 lanes road may turn into a 3 lanes or a 4 lanes depending on the situation. So keep that in mind. If you want to drive, that's one of the things that you gotta watch out for. A lot of bikes, motorbikes that comes in that cuts in front of you, so watch out for those things. Parking wise, if you're in KL, there are places in there where I hate the most is double parking. They double park, they triple park, and it's like you can't get out. They'll find the places, they'll just park. So this is very typical in Asia. Malaysia is no exception. So keep that in mind also. So for me, coming back after half a decade gone from Malaysia, that again was reminding myself that hey, that is the norm and not get upset about it. Okay, so oftentimes very easy, honk your horns and people come running and move their car. So that's driving, parking, and some of the etiquettes in Malaysia. So going back, the intention was to spend as much time as I can with my family, and then getting my kids, my wife, and everybody together with the rest of my families, my parents, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins. Those are the intention of my trip. And we did do some of the tourist stuff. We did go to KLCC. We went to KL Tower. I think that was an experience to be in what we call the skybox, looking down with just glasses in between you and what we call a big fall. A great experience if you haven't done it before. Do that. We did go to the bird park. Again, that was kind of fun for the kids to do. It was fairly hot, but it was fun. We end up going to the historical city of Malacca, which is kind of near my wife's hometown. So that was a good experience as well. And then in Ipoh, we did visit a cave. It was more of like a temple / cave. But it was a great experience. Good to see what we call the cave systems in around Malaysia, especially in Ipoh side. For some of you that know what I'm talking about, if you are in a city in Ipoh, do walk around, do find those caves. We did went to one. There were a couple of nets. I did went to one. Those to me was an eye-opener and experience by itself, and it's fun. Now for the kids, even though it wasn't something that I would imagine they had fun, but they did end up having a lot of fun with it. The other places that surprises me was Ipoh has I think it's like a museum or art museum, like a 3D place. I did not go, but my kids did go and they had lots of fun. Overall, I think it was a great trip. The challenges that I had was one, I think time zone playing in fact, because it's 12 hours difference from Malaysia and the US. It's actually 12 hours ahead of the US. So when you're flying into it, when you get there, do consider that. Do try to stay awake as long as you can. Sleep, and sleep when there's time to sleep based on the Malaysian time. That will get you away from having jet lag. Now my kid, who is 7 years old and 13 years, did get affected by it. So for the first week or so, right about 6-7 o'clock, they were too tired to eat, and they were being just grumpy and things like that. So take that into consideration. It does affect me as well. I get really tired during that time. Food wise, I think for me going back, it wasn't that much of an issue because I love the food. I went back, I wanted to eat a lot of different foods, but since my kids could not do it, they could not do spicy food. And we did end up eating quite a lot of what we call Chinese food in Malaysia, but the flavor is different. So that was one of the challenges for them to finding the flavor that they like. We did end up going to, one or two times we end up having McDonald's, hot dogs, spaghettis, and that did, I know the kids enjoy that because it gives them a sense of home. So even when we came back, the first thing that my daughter said is like, "Dad, I do not want to eat any more Asian food for the next week or so when we get back." So that's kind of hilarious to see. Language-wise, English English is a spoken language in Malaysia. It is a second language. Everywhere you go, I think English is fairly used. There are people that do not speak well, or call English really well. So for me, it wasn't that bad because it's one of those things, your memory things is clicking, and I was able to pick up and speak Malaysian language. So it was fairly easy for me. But people can tell that I'm not from Malaysia anymore, just my appearance, the way I present myself, and the way I talk. So it's very different. For the kids, they had issues talking to my parents, for example. My mom doesn't speak English, so it was a challenge communicating with my son. And my son doesn't speak Chinese. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Now, my oldest one did take Chinese school, so she was able to communicate much better than the brother can. The overall was good. I think food, we did end up getting some of the stuff, things that I enjoy, char kway teow, chicken rice, wonton mee, and those are the things that, nasi lemak. We did eat durian. I love durian, so it was durian season, so we did enjoy a lot of those. So if you go to Malaysia, do not skip the food. You want to try out the food. It is a food haven. You can go Google it, YouTube it, whatever you want. There's a lot of people that went there, and food is the primary reason that I go back there, if it wasn't just because of my family. So one of the things we did end up doing was that flying back out to the US, you get to the airport, you got one last stop for food. If you are basically saying, hey, what was one last thing I want to eat in Malaysia before I leave, go to the, I think it's Terminal 1, KLIA, Grandmama's Restaurant. It's a very popular place. It has really good, I would say, Malaysian food. Pricey, but I think it's well worth it. It was one of our last stops before we flew out from Malaysia. Alright, for those that are flying back into the US or flying into the US, your first port of entry, and I see this every time I travel, and I see it again, to tourists or people flying to US, they get upset. The first port of entry, everybody has to get off the plane. Your bags will go through custom. You will have to go through custom. So you have to go to custom, go pick up your luggages, and then you go to custom to scan through your luggages. And then if you have transits, if you are transit to another different city, things like that, you do have to take your bags, follow the signs that says transit, you take your luggages, follow that route, and put it back into the airport system or the conveying belt, and that gets you all back luggages all the way to your final destination in the US. So remember, that is a requirement, that is a must. So do not get upset. I know I got upset a couple of times because I asked, when I bought tickets, especially in Malaysia, and asked the ticket agent and said, hey, do I need to check out my bags, or does my bag get check in all the way to my final destination? If the answer is yes, it's all the way in, they don't know what they're talking about. First port, you do have to disembark, you do have to take your luggages and then put it back in. So give yourself enough time at the airport, especially the first port in the US. So that's it, that's all I've got. Hopefully this helps some of you if you're traveling to Malaysia. Do go to Malaysia. I was born in Malaysia, but you can take a person out from Malaysia, but you can never take Malaysia out of that person. Bye.